Warning. This episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Give us 1 hour and we'll help you change the way you think about happiness. Harvesting Happiness with Lisa Cypers Kamen is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Each week, Lisa spotlights diverse trendsetters and change agents who are the greatest contemporary thinkers and doers, devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. Your host, Lisa Cypers Kamen, is a widely recognized applied positive psychology expert, author, documentary filmmaker, and lecturer specializing in optimal lifestyle management. Let's get to it. Here's Lisa.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us on today's show, where you will learn about future planning, growing better services and better businesses through visioning, with my guest today, Ari Weinzweig. So let's talk a little bit about Zingerman's, because I know that from what Rich has told me that you just started, you didn't start the business, you bought the business. No? So tell me the story.
Okay. The story is, I grew up in Chicago. I came to Ann Arbor to go to U of M, which for those who don't live here is University of Michigan. I studied Russian history, particular focus on the anarchists. We have the largest anarchist collection in the country. It's here at University of Michigan in the grad library, called the Labadie collection.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a lot we don't know. And after graduating, although visioning is now a huge piece of what we do here at Zingerman's, which is very tied to positive psychology, I had no vision whatsoever. I had only what David White, I don't know if you know his books, W-H-Y-T-E, writer, poet, very good.
Yes, I do know his work.
He calls it the via negativa. That's where you're clueless about where you want to go, but you're really clear where you don't want to go. And that's kind of all I had, which is I knew I didn't want to go home. In order to not go home, I needed a job, and I'd driven a cab while I was in school, which was fine, but not particularly interesting. And so one of my roommates was waiting tables at a restaurant in downtown Ann Arbor, which is 12 minutes from here, because everything in Ann Arbor is 12 minutes from everything else at the most. So I went in there and applied for a job as a server, and they interviewed me, and they said they would call me, but they didn't. And so I went back after a couple of weeks, and I reapplied as a busser. And they said they'd call me, and they didn't. Clearly, the employment market was very different then than it is today. And so I waited 2 more weeks. They still hadn't called me, and I went back, and I was like, hey, I'm running out of money. Do you have anything? They offered me a job washing dishes, and I just said, sure, why not? And that's how I got started. So there was zero entrepreneurial interest. I come from a family where no one was in business, so I didn't even know you could go into business, and it mostly seemed like business did bad things to people, and but I needed a job, so whatever. And I had no particular interest in food. It was just, I needed a job. So I just got lucky because I totally stumbled into work that I love, and then also into great people. So my partner, Paul Saginaw, was the general manager at that restaurant. Frank Carolla, who's one of the partners in our bakery, was a line cook, and Maggie Bayless, who's one of the partners, or the founding partner in Zing Train, which is our training business, was a cocktail waitress. So I have no idea why we were all in there together, but we were, and we're now 40 years later, and we're still working together. But anyway,
that's amazing.
Frank started teaching me how to prep and cook the line, and I started managing kitchens. So in food lingo, my background is all back of the house. And then Paul left about halfway through the 4 years I worked there, and he opened Monahan's Seafood Market with Mike Monahan, which will be unfamiliar to you, but is really one of the best fish markets in the country still. And Paul and I stayed friends. And fall of 81, I reached a point in my work there where it's not like I hated going to work, and it was not like it was a bad company, but it was just sort of less and less inspiring. And I guess intuitively I could sense more and more where they were going and where I was going wasn't the same place. And so November 1, 81, I gave 2 months notice, unsure of what would be next, but it was just time to move on. And Paul, not knowing I had given notice, called me like 3 days later, and he said that there was this little building coming open, and we had talked off and on, like people in the food business, like positive psychologists probably don't get together and talk about starting a new university, but maybe they do. But But they should. But anyway, so he had grown up in Detroit where you could get good deli food, and in Chicago you could get it, but you couldn't get it here. And so somehow within like a week we decided we were going to open, and 4.5 months later we were open. So March 15th, 1982 is when we opened. Have you never been to the deli?
No.
Oh, well, you got a whole...
I've got a food tour,
yeah,
you know?
Well, it's too small for you to read, but all those things at the bottom are all
I can read
here.
it. I got my glasses on now.
Okay. You could do a whole day of just going to what we do. But anyway, when we started, it was just 1,300 square feet. So like about the size of this room that we're in right now. Me and Paul with 2 employees, 29 seats and 25 sandwiches. And that's it.
And now what are we looking at? We're looking at...
Now we're looking at, depending on how you count, I don't know what we got, 12 businesses. But everything's here in the Ann Arbor area. I had it already, but it's stronger, even stronger now, believe in doing business in the place that you are, and that...
To connect.
Yeah, to everything. It just doesn't, the other way is not interesting to me, and it seems very industrial, and everybody likes local, but then they want to apply local solutions globally, which is the antithesis of local. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's incongruous. Anyway, so everything's here within 10 minutes or 15 minutes of each other.
And when you talk about the 12 businesses, it's not just the restaurant business.
No. So anyway, we will do this year about $65 million in sales, and we have about 700 employees now, plus we hire about 350 more at the holidays for mail order. But yes, we have the deli. We've expanded 1, 2, 3 times. Wow. So it's way bigger than it was. Right now we're sitting at Zingerman's Roadhouse, which is a restaurant, which is all regional American food. So everything from oysters to barbecue to fried chicken to macaroni to
great coffee. I pulled up
from our coffee roasting business. So, well, you pulled up. So that's a little trailer, 1952 Spartan trailer that people, as you experience, drive up, and that's why you thought that was all there was.
No. I knew there was more, but I got here so early. I mean, we probably should back up and say that I sort of rolled in at dawn on the red eye for the Positive Business Conference at University of Michigan. And I was like, all right, I knew we had our appointment, but let me have a little experience, independent of you.
Great. I'm all for it.
And what I saw were people that were happy to be there to serve, the kids that were serving really early in the morning. And I just sat there in the rain and observed. So there's a little bit of magic that comes along with you, Ari. And that's what I want to.
That's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, let me roll through the business.
Roll through it.
Get that out of the way. We have a little creamery where we make handmade cream cheese, old school, like it was done in 1900, which is all the food we do is traditional, old style food. And we make gelato, goat cheese and stuff there. We have a bakery, everything, bread, pastry and all that. Coffee, I mentioned, a little candy business. We make handmade candy bars. Cornman Farms is our event space, so that's about 10 minutes west of here. It's a 1834 farmhouse and an 1837 barn, which we totally renovated, and we do like weddings and corporate stuff like that. Miss Kim is a little Korean restaurant. Zing Train is our training business, so we teach seminars. People come from all over, and we go to them also. In fact, I'm doing one in San Francisco in June. But anyway, what am I forgetting? Mail order, we ship all over the place. And our food tours is formally our newest business, even though we've been doing them for about 20 years. And then each business, we have managing partner or partners in that business. And we operate as one organization with these semi-autonomous pieces. Mm. So
when you talk about the food tour?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like people pay, and a group of 15, 18, whatever, and Christy Brayblack is the partner in there, and so they go, to visit people that produce food that we buy. So you're like going to the producers, and then you might go to wineries and eat in good restaurants and basically have a week-long food experience of wherever, Hungary or the region of Italy or whatever.
So it's a travel component.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're little groups. I mean, it's not like 100 people.
Right. What, a dozen?
Yeah, like 15 or...
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And where's your favorite place?
My favorite place to travel to?
To travel.
I don't know if I have a favorite, but I like a lot of places. Italy, Spain. I like Santa Fe. I like San Francisco, although it's getting so crowded and more and more like New York.
And expensive.
More and more like New York. But, I don't know. I like lots of places.
So in the businesses...
I like Ireland.
I've never been to Ireland.
I've been there like 20 times.
How's the food?
Great. You just have to know where to go. The food is fantastic because they basically flunked out on the Industrial Revolution. And so in the yellow book there's an essay on 12 natural laws of business. And one of them is that strengths lead to weaknesses. And so whatever you're good at or will lead to what you're not good at, and whatever you're not good at also leads to something that can turn out to be good. So they did so badly in many parts of the Industrial Revolution that most of their farmland was never converted to mass market industrial monocropping. And so you had the perfect setting to start growing all this really great food.
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the books, because another part of what you do is you are a prolific writer and producer of books. A Lapsed Anarchist Approach to, I'm holding Managing Ourselves.
Yeah.
A Lapsed Anarchist Approach to Being a Better Leader.
Yeah.
A Lapsed Anarchist Approach to Building a Great Business. A Lapsed Anarchist Approach to the Power of Beliefs in Business. And that was the one that grabbed my eye.
These two pamphlets are not in those books.
Yeah, these are like little manifestos.
There's food books, too.
The Art of Business and Bottom Line Change. And then food books were...
a couple food books, too.
So, like, when do you have any spare time?
Just make it happen.
Make it happen.
I wrote an essay in Managing Ourselves about time management that tells what I do.
Here comes that break. We'll be right back.
To learn more about cultivating sustainable well-being at home and the office, visit harvestinghappiness.com and explore Lisa's experiential on-site brain fitness workshops, corporate programming, and speaking engagement services.
And we are back talking about the power of future planning, growing better services and better businesses through visioning with my guest today, Ari Weinzweig. Let's get back to the conversation.
I have the belief that most people have very unhealthy relationship with time.
Talk a little bit about that. What time is being the most precious commodity.
Yeah, but I've come to say that people, so like somebody who's suffering from anorexia thinks about food a lot, and I think about food just as much. But they think about food, and I'm not blaming them because it's a disease, but I mean, they think about food in a very fearful, negative way, and it takes over, whereas I think about food in a joyful, positive, learning, experiential kind of way. And I think most people's relationship with time is all about fear of losing it, and they're mad at it. And, people always are, they're pissed off at time because there's not enough and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, you have a relationship with time. So think about, is there any relationship in your life where you're always mad at the other person and it goes well?
Good point.
Answer, no. And also the answer is, in another relationship, at least generally the other person's trying to accommodate what's important to you, but time's not going to change. So the only one that could change is me. The
relationship to time and the preciousness of it.
Time's what it is.
Yeah.
So then, so I actually wrote a vision, and it's in the book for a positive relationship with time. And so I kind of feel like there's always time.
Well, if you make it.
It's there. We all have. Jean-Louis Servan-Schreiber wrote a really great little book called The Art of Time, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said the paradox of time is that although everybody wants more, the reality is we all have access to all of it.
And what do we do with it? Are we spending it sort of surfing the internet, or are we, or we're being an artist? Because this is another angle of your work,
that just came
right?
out. Yeah,
is about making art in what we do.
Yeah,
which is what you've done with this empire you've built.
Yeah, I don't like to look at it as an empire though, because it's the opposite of anarchism. But people say it all the time.
But it's true.
Well, I would say it's more of a collaborative or a collective or some word like that. Like empire would envision somebody ruling the empire from some central thing, and we don't even have a center.
Yeah, I get you. But this is the product, the gift of your artistry.
Well, yeah, but the part of the artistry is to bring other people's artistry to the fore, and so that model of hierarchical rulership, which is everywhere, even in many progressive organizations. I'm speaking this morning to a group of nonprofit leaders that are here for training, and a lot of nonprofits with really inspiring missions, but they're still run like General Motors, which is in Congress. So the idea is to really create a setting in which everyone is thinking like a leader.
And that's clear from when you walk in the door.
Good.
To this place. At least my experience was I was, greeted with a lot of personal...
It's kind of random. I mean, you're greeted at 7 a.m.
7 a.m. on a rainy day morning by happy faces who are apologetic for the delayed onset of spring in Michigan and eager to please and bring me some ruby red grapefruit juice just because it's good.
Yeah.
Just because it's good, and they wanted to share something good.
Yeah.
And I think that's
a nice way to live.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
It's a very nice way to live. Yeah. And, coming from the West Coast, coming from Los Angeles, and how life operates at breakneck speed, when we talk about time, it's gobbled up by traffic.
Yeah. That's part of why I live here.
Yeah.
I never sit in traffic.
It's 12 minutes. Yeah. That's it.
There's like a 15-minute rush hour, but if you just avoid that.
It's all pretty good.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about this new pamphlet, The Art of Business.
Yeah, so the fourth book in the series that you referenced about beliefs is based on a self-fulfilling belief cycle, which you probably already know from your studies, but I learned it from Bob Wright in Chicago. He and his wife Judith Wright run the Wright Institute, and Bob can't remember where he learned it, so I don't know who to give total credit to, but I learned it from him. So it's basically a self-fulfilling belief cycle, which I didn't make up.
Right.
But when I learned about it, it kind of blew my mind because it actually helped me. There was an organizational issue, like not cataclysmic, but just something that was frustrating me for quite a while. And I tried everything in these books and nothing was working. And it just kept bothering me. And when I read that, I was like, oh, I totally get it. All the other things won't work because they don't believe in the work. And they weren't bad people, and they weren't non-committed, and they weren't yada, yada, yada. It's just if you don't believe in what you're doing, you won't do it well. And so I did the only thing history majors know how to do, which is start studying, and then I kept reading, and then it blew my mind more, and I kept reading, and it blew my mind more, and on we go. So it turned into a 600-page book. But anyway.
And that's how you roll.
Well,
you don't do it lightly.
No, if you're going to do something, do it.
Yeah.
So anyway, the self-fulfilling belief cycle basically says what I believe is true. We all have thousands of beliefs. We got beliefs about biscuits. We got beliefs about books. Like we do all the design and we print them here in town, and we're off of Amazon because I don't like that much. And, I like nice paper and whatever. So we have beliefs about everything. What we believe leads us to take action, which would include us even sitting here today, is based on what we believe. Based on our actions, the people around us start to form their own beliefs, and based on those beliefs, they take action. So if you imagine it as a circle, it leads almost always, 90% of the time, right back to your original belief, right? So if you change your belief, things start to play out differently.
Change your mind, change your world kind of thing.
You're kind of a jerk and you're here to take advantage, I don't know, whatever, then I'm going to be stingy, and then, you're going to think I'm a phony because I wrote the, whatever. So it would lead to very negative outcomes. Whereas if I believe what I believe, which is you're a nice person, I don't really know you yet, but we're getting to know each other, and start with believing the best, which is positive psychology, then it's going to go well, and interesting things are going to happen. And I don't know where it's going to lead, but it'll lead to something interesting. So with all of that in mind, I started to realize as I was drawing to the end of the book that, like artists, whether musicians, whatever, like artists experience the world differently.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and then if you started to think of yourself as if your life was art, you would pay more attention, because once the brushstroke goes on the painting, it's staying there. And so it became this really interesting idea that sort of stayed with me, and then it kept resonating. And then one little piece of the cycle is that, sort of based on what we believe, we all, and I'm sure there's a technical PhD's positive psychology word for it, like cognitive bias, I think it is. But so we all filter out the information that doesn't fit with what we believe, and we all take in the information that supports what we believe.
It's called movie making.
Okay. And if you're,
right?
If you're a high achiever, like everybody who's listening to this pretty much is likely to be, then we actually go out and look for information that supports what we believe. But you see and experience things differently when you have the belief that it matters, right? So if you bring a visual artist into this room, they're going to see more than you are likely to see. It's not that you're not capable of seeing it. You're just not going to look in the same way.
Well, the brain is not wired at that to see that.
But it can be.
For an artist, they're more left brain, right? So they're seeing.
Yeah, but my personal belief is it's just practice, and anybody can learn to. I mean, like, I don't have kids, so I pay zero attention to the car seat or to what kind of shoe they're wearing. But I guarantee you that a parent with little kids will notice, because they were just shopping for it.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of music, but I'm not a musician. So a musician will listen differently. An engineer will look at the ceiling differently than I do. But I think we're all capable of that. We just aren't paying attention in that way, and higher attention makes things more interesting. And so, artists, I realized if we looked at our lives like art, then every little thing matters, right? So the way you treat the cashier at the drugstore is part of your art.
It matters.
And, so I gave a little talk to, 30, I don't know how old they were, 19, 18, 20-year-olds, from the community college. And, I just was like, hey, like, I get it. Like, when I was 20, like, you think you're going to live forever, and that's a nice belief, but it's not true. And I said, but if, I know it's like, it was overwhelming for me, and I had no clue what I was going to do when I was 20. But I guess if you look at it like you're making music for the ages, like, what music are you making that in 50 years people are going to be excited to listen to? Because that's what we're doing. And if you go into it as just get through the day, which, Maslow's hierarchy and all that, I understand if people are living, trying to pay the bills, it's less of an issue, they don't have the space mentally or whatever to maybe think about it. But I think there's so much opportunity to just create beauty and appreciate beauty.
Well, again, it's placing your attention to the value of that beauty. And even though somebody may just be working on survival, they still can do that. And so the experience becomes more joyful.
Yeah. And then if they're more joyful, it's all more joyful.
That's a positive contagion.
Things like, your necklace today, that are nice, and they're here anyway. Why not notice them?
Yeah, and like your T-shirt, which I like.
Which my T-shirt comes out of this, so it's from the artwork. The story's in the pamphlet, but 15 or so years ago, I was in New York City, and I was walking down the street in Soho, and I saw this guy who was selling his artwork on the table, and I really liked it. His name's Patrick Earl Barnes, and he paints on like pieces of produce crate. So of course it was basically folk art. It's on produce crate wood, so I like that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of produce crates. Anyway, I bought a few pieces, and I took it home with me, and then I don't know, over the years I bought more. I mean, they're not super expensive, and I have like 15 of them hanging in my house. And, at some point I started emailing with him, and, I kept saying like I'm a total introvert, so we never have anybody at our house. So I'm like, why don't you put it on your art on a T-shirt? It's perfect for it, because then I can wear it to work. And then people, like, I feel bad because they're never going to see your stuff here. But anyway, so finally, after like 3 years, I was working on this, and then his e-news came, and it had this painting that said, "Art is how you think." And I'm like,
that's
wow,
it.
This is perfect. So I finally got him to put his art on a T-shirt. So I have that T-shirt. This is a scratch board, which is what the drawings in all the books are, of me wearing the T-shirt. So this is our art of his art.
I get it.
It's a little Escher-esque.
It is. Well, I like the message, though.
It's fabulous.
It's a fabulous message.
Right. And he's great. Yeah.
And we don't think of it. Like, we don't think that our thought is a form of artistry.
But it's all, if you think of it's all art, then there's like every little thing can be this creative act, and it's just more interesting. It's more fun, and it creates positive energy, because that's what art is.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, when you realize, like, if, waiting on a guest is art. Walking down the street is art, if you choose to approach it that way.
Here comes that pause. We'll be right back, and that is a guarantee.
Did you know that happiness is actually good for your health? Happy people live longer, are more productive, and make better partners, parents, and professionals. Connect with us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness, and follow Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen for a daily dose of inspiration.
Back talking about growing better services and building better businesses with my guest, Ari Weinzweig. Let's get back to the conversation.
Well, it goes back to that connection thing, that is what we're here to do. And there is an art to being able to connect. And the books that you've written, the products that you deliver in your trainings, the food that you bring to tables is an expression of that artistry and that desire to connect.
Yeah.
Which is, that's all there is.
Yeah. Yep.
So when people come to your trainings and they come from a different industry, maybe they come from high tech, and then it's broken down to this very elemental sensory experience.
Yeah.
What do they say? Like,
well, they all say different things because everybody's different. But I mean, by definition, as you already know, we attract the people most who are already inclined to learn what we, like you, who are already inclined.
Drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, although I don't like that, because the people who drink the Kool-Aid died. So it's actually an interesting thing that everybody uses that phraseology, but I just changed the K to C, and then it's, we aid you in being cool, which makes more sense. But anyways, so yeah, they're just more inclined to this way of thinking, because we all go and seek out what fits. But I think a lot of what we have done over the years, and Maggie from Zingerman, who's a German lit major from Oberlin, but went back to Michigan and got her MBA, and really came to be passionate about training. And so a lot of the work of thinking this way the structuring of it came from her leadership and teaching. And then, but like, the world is very complex, which is not a bad thing, even though people now are mad about complexity. It's like, no, it's like Carl Rogers said, it's a higher form of life. So it's supposed to get more complex.
Yes.
Right. The problem is then they diminish the complexity because they have a hard time dealing with it, but I want to honor the complexity. But I think that we've created simple models and recipes through which the complexity can be processed. So it doesn't try to crush the complexity. It's just saying, like, here's a framework, like the art thing. It's simple. Through that lens, it's like incredibly complicated, kaleidoscopic, whatever word you want to use. But that's cool. But it gives you this one frame through which you can look at things.
That concept of your life is art, go out and like do your canvas or whatever that modality is. Do it well. Do it passionately. Yeah. Do it in the most alive, loving way that you can. Yeah. And that is joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, it's funny. I was thinking about how we got to one another. That you have a friend, Rich Sheridan, who's one of the co-founders of Menlo Innovations, and I had Rich on the show a few months ago, and we really connected. We were talking about his new book, and he was like, "You've got to meet this guy," because he thought that we would have some synergy. And
pretty much anybody who likes us will like them. And
exactly,
will like us,
right.
So,
and it's tribal in a way. But it's also like saying, all right, this person wants to make the world a better place. They're doing what they love. This person wants to make the world a better place, doing what they love.
Yeah. I don't think it's tribal because it's not exclusive and it's not
inclusive.
It's not an us versus them. It's just shared values and beliefs, and one of them is around spirit of generosity. So then it's openness to the world, you know. So it's I think it's much of the world is organized around groups and clubs and tribes, and there's some positive feeling of connection that people like, but it's being used incessantly in destructive ways.
Well, not to, and the idea is not to exclude, but to include.
Right.
And that's what I mean. It's tribal in its best light, where it's like, you know, everybody gets to be a part of.
Right.
And you mentioned the word generosity.
It's just a tribe that's not determined by blood.
By religion, money.
Or anything else, I guess. But I guess
politics.
It's just, I guess I just look at it like everybody is a unique individual, and that although one can assign people to groups, it's always fallacious at some level. Because if we were to say like that the big cataclysmic difference in the United States was tall people versus short people, or that old film with blue-eyed kids and brown-eyed, you know, they're just constructs that people made up, and then they start assigning statistical norms to those groups, and then they start saying, you know, and then this is my anarchism stuff, but because people we're all raised to think hierarchically, almost all, then we don't even know it. But here's two things. If you believe you can assign characteristics to a group, which is both, it's not anybody can assign them, but they're not accurate. So if you believe you can say women this, or men this, or Jews this, or black people that, and then you think hierarchically, it's either your group's better than my group, or my group's better than your group, and no one wants to be worse, so they always have to assert their superiority. And it's so endemic that people don't even know it. And so like sports, which I'm not down on, but like people, you know, whatever, Raider fans are this.
It's religion.
It is religion.
It's religion.
It is religion. And they say things about Raider fans or 49er fans that if you said them about women or black people or Jewish people
or Republicans or Democrats,
right, it would be completely appropriately unacceptable. Yeah. But if we allow it here and actually encourage it and think it's fun, it's the same thing going on in society.
Going back to Carl Rogers and this sort of the Rogerian approach to connection, that there's just unconditional positive regard for another living, breathing human being.
Yeah.
Because you exist, because you are, therefore you are deserving.
Yeah. Well, there's a quote in here in the Beliefs book. I read Isaac Asimov's biography. I don't know why I read it, but I liked his science fiction when I was a kid. And a lot of the science fiction writers turned out to be anarchists and very interesting thinkers. But in that era of the mid-20th century where it was dangerous to do that, they put their theories onto other planets where people couldn't bother them about it. But anyway, I like Asimov. They were very creative thinkers about society and stuff. So anyways, he wrote in his biography, or in the biography, there was a quote from him, and it said, basically, I just choose to believe that everybody's a good person because every once in a while they're not, but the pain and cynicism that goes with choosing to believe they're not a good person makes my life worse. And so the struggle of the few that let me down is far less than the negativity that I would live with if I go into life like that.
Yeah. Well, I think it does dictate experience, right?
Yeah.
So, how we show up in the world will not always predict the experience, because sometimes we're surprised, but I'm okay with that, to be surprised.
Well, of course. But that's the thing.
And to
that's
fail.
the belief cycle and the evidence and the way we look at things. So Ursula K. Le Guin is the other one I was trying to think of. So she just passed away a few years ago. But she was very anarchistic in her other planets and what she did. But, they were very creative thinkers.
I don't know. For me, I guess it's because I've been doing this so long. I think of the world as a pretty hospitable place.
Right.
In the midst of inhospitable acts happening, not the other way around.
Yeah, but I just, my own belief is that even the people who are doing the inhospitable acts, which are clearly like in Sri Lanka the other day, could be pretty inhospitable, still believe they're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Well, and yes, I get what you're saying. And the motivation, the lens through which we view the world.
Right. Changes everything, which is why the country can't, like half the country reads the same news story as the other one and comes to 180-degree opposite conclusions, because that's what they're going to just keep confirming their beliefs. And what I learned, which I'm sure you learned a long time ago in school, but it's like you can't make anybody change what they believe. And the harder you try, the worse it gets. And out of this fourth book on beliefs, I actually started this whole model of it. Organizational ecosystem, and I started to imagine beliefs as the root system, because you can't see them, but everything that comes up, like our behavior, is based on what's happening underground. And in fact, the harder you try to make somebody change their beliefs, the deeper the roots go.
Yes.
Which is being evidenced nationally in politics right now. It's not going to change. Like, no one changes their mind unless you can change your beliefs, but it's either you choose to or something totally incongruous happens, like the guy who has strong racist beliefs but is saved by an African American, or you believe women can't be leaders, but then one day your cousin or your friend just really, steps up in the moment and you're like, wow, my belief is wrong. So we clearly change our beliefs. I mean, there's historical examples all the time, but what I realized the obvious, I can't make anybody change their beliefs. But you can demonstrate another way, and that's where the leadership comes in. Of course. Yeah. Whether they choose to change them or not is up to them. So, I come from a fairly religious family. I don't believe. There's nothing they're going to do that's going to make me change that, and there's nothing I'm going to do that's going to make them change it either. Yeah. So, I can give them a lot of evidence, but they're going to show me why I'm wrong, and not in an argumentative way. My sister and I get along great, but I don't try to change her mind, and she doesn't try to change mine. Well, some things just are, and that's okay. No, totally. It's like... Right, well, that's the point, is that we can allow, as long as everybody can be allowed to believe what they want to believe without impinging on the other people, then it works. The problem becomes when people start to impose their own beliefs, and then here we are, intermingled. In a hot mess. Yeah. It's allowing somebody the dignity of their process. Yeah. We don't have to agree, but I value your opinion. Yeah. And therefore, you have that space to just be and do. Yep.
We're going to just dash off to that break, and we will be right back.
Who says money can't buy happiness? Whether you are a skeptic or seeker, check out Lisa's new book. Are we happy yet? 8 Keys to Unlocking a Joyful Life. A boot camp manual for greater emotional fitness is available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, IndieBound, and HarvestingHappiness.com. Here's a truth bomb. Emotions are contagious, and happiness is a universally desired state. But we tend to forget that we all have the freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable each day, regardless of external circumstances. Explore the journey of human happiness, how to find it and keep it, with Lisa's documentary film, H Factor. Where is your heart? Visit HarvestingHappiness.com to learn more.
Yeah.
are back, continuing the conversation with my guest today, Ari Weinzweig. We're talking about future planning, what it means to grow better services and better businesses through intentional visioning. Let's get back to that conversation.
You know what? You are a high output individual.
Okay.
That's what I like. When I look at what you create and the projects that you take on, I'm like, this guy, the making, you're a maker. You call it artist, but it's also like a maker. You like to make things.
That's what artists do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everybody's making something.
Everybody's making something.
It's just whether they're cognizant of what they're making.
If they're making trouble or they're making.
Yeah. Well, art is, can be interruptive too. I mean, it's supposed to get your attention. So it's just what's the intent of the artist, right? And so if the intent of the artist is to destroy, which, I studied Russian history, so the nihilists or the nihilists or however you like to say it from the 19th century, like that was it's a fascinating group and a fascinating period, but it was basically about destruction and that was a creative act, right? And so, it comes from a very low hope. There's a couple essays in this book about hope, creating hope in the workplace and how to actively create hope and how to avoid crushing hope. But, when you have low hope, then you also have low fear. And when you have low fear, you take reckless actions because it doesn't seem like it matters.
That's interesting. Go back to that for a second. The low hope, because hope is such an integral part of when we talk about positive psychology and values in action. Going back to Chris Peterson's work, right? That without hopefulness, it's pretty hard, to find happiness. But what you're saying in the context of business, I believe, is that when there is low hope, there's low fear, and then you take a risk that might just be a positive one.
No, I'm saying you take a risk that's a negative one.
Ah, okay.
Like if you have low hope for the future. Well, okay, so if you Google the last election, hope, and something like that, I think in the Atlantic Monthly there was a very interesting article which will show you the number one, the most interesting correlation or contrast between Trump voters and Clinton voters was their hope level, which totally correlates with this. So if you have low hope, then you have low fear. See, when I have high hope for the future, like I could, I like you, but if I didn't like you, which we all don't like somebody, then I just could throw these biscuits at you because, whatever, I don't care. We're going out of business next week anyway. Who cares? But if you have high hope for the future, then it's like, well, I would never throw a biscuit at a customer because it would have major implications. If you don't care about your job and you think it's a dead end, why would you do good work? So people with hope for a better future, fear. With your kids, like if you had low hope for your kid, you wouldn't be that worried about getting them into college.
True, but the other side of it is the what the hell. When hope is low, like, all right, you're sort of at your wit's end, and you do take the risk. There is no hope. Sometimes that works out. It's the other way around. That's what I thought you were talking about.
No, I think for me that's a different thing because that was realizing, as somebody who grew up with a ton of fear, and I'm still afraid of pretty much everything, I just learned to go ahead anyway.
That's a whole other talk.
Well, I got a million talks. We're barely just beginning.
I know.
But, no, I'm afraid of everything. But I realize I just learned the hard way, and I mean the hard way, it's all risky. So once I realize it's all risky, then there's no safe way. It's all risky.
It's interesting because do you really think it's risky when you play out the possible scenarios?
Yeah. Being in business is risk.
Yes, and you could fail.
Selling the business today seems in some ways safer, but then that has, there's always problems that will come from everything. So natural law number 9 on that list is success means you get better problems. So it's really just picking what problems.
Higher quality problems.
Yeah. I didn't say bigger, I said better. So I'm choosing the problem of staying in, it's hard to stay in business. So
yeah,
in some ways,
I would
it
imagine,
would be
yes.
easier to sell the business in theory and get money like people do. But then you have a different problem. Now, what do you do?
And you have to do something.
Right.
As humans, we have to do.
I like what I do, so why do I? And I don't really. I mean, money's good. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not driven by money, and I have pretty much what I want now. So, getting a lot more money, but then living 30 years aimless. Like I meet all these people who sell their businesses, but then they never find anything that they really want to do.
No.
Not all of them, but so it's like, why? This is the work, right? Is to help, Emily Moy to get to her dreams. And, if I can do that, then that's the work. So why leave?
Is Emily Moy one of your students?
No, the students are from the Executive Leadership Institute. Emily Moy works here and James works here. They're coming from all over the country to learn our visioning process. Well, they're here for a week. They do this thing with the School of Social Work, and then every year they bring them here. And I teach something for 2 hours. I think last year I taught Hope. And then they have lunch, and then they take them back to campus, and they keep going for 3 days.
Yeah, hope is a really juicy topic.
Well, it's just, I realized the hard way which the story's in the book, but, inadvertently, we all crush hope. And I read it from Rick Snyder, who in Michigan was the governor, so you have to clarify, but the guy from Kansas, who I never met, passed away a few years ago, positive psychologist, and then Shane Lopez, who was his student, who wrote about hope also. And so it's like, people with low hope don't do good work. Whoa, in hindsight, super shocking, but I never thought about it, right? So if you have people in your organization that have low hope, or kids in a classroom that have low hope, they're not going to do good work. Then I realized, okay, well, lo and behold, we inadvertently crush hope through callous comments, cynicism, ignoring people all day long. So we basically are paying them X, then we reduce their hope through our own, unintentional but ineffective work. So now we're paying them the same to do less effective work because we did something. But conversely, for like zero cost, we could actually be increasing their hope in the same time it takes to crush the hope. And when they have high hope, like all these statistics show, like way better work, better longevity, better emotional resilience, better leadership.
And I wanted to go into that about sort of the holistic approach to all of this. I mean, the books that you've written really are geared towards business and
yeah, but they're really about life. I mean,
yes, and when
because I look at it as all one life. I don't like the work. I wrote a lot about it, but I think the work-life balance construct is terrible, super destructive.
Well, it should be integrated and through and through. Yeah, it's all one life. How you show up at the office is how you show up for life.
Right. And so part of why I've realized over the years, and I keep learning more all the time, of course, but is that part of why what we do works is because what we teach people is 100% applicable in their life outside of work, whereas what most people are learning at work is either different and or the opposite of what they want to do outside of life. So at work, they teach them to be competitive and dominate and crush the competition and outdo your colleague in the other department and fight for the resources.
To win.
But then you're supposed to go home and be calm and generous and collaborative, and it doesn't, people can't do it. And so what we're teaching here is totally all of these skill sets, visioning, building. Like if you have a kid, you need to help them build their own. If you're doing anything, it works way better if you have a vision of where you're going. Yeah. If you have negative beliefs, it's going to cause negative outcomes because negative roots create weeds and positive beliefs create good things. So if you have negative beliefs about your significant other, or you have negative beliefs about your neighbor or your parents or yourself, it's going to be doomed. So all the stuff they're learning here can be used outside of work because it's all one existence.
It's the yoga of life. I mean, that's really what it sounds like. I use that as the metaphor. But I practice yoga. I practiced it for 20 years, and how I step out into the world, for me, aligns with how I step onto that mat. Yeah. And I think that's kind of it.
Well, Yeah, it's just trying to be the same person.
Yeah.
Yeah, wherever you go. So yeah, I wrote about it, but I like agricultural metaphors because that's what we do. But I think work life, when people say that, they're putting up a boundary that's artificial and unhealthy, and B, they're when they say life, what they really mean is their family. But they forgot the third piece, which is themselves, which is critical. And so the old Native American agriculture is called Three Sisters because they would grow corn, squash, and beans as a trio because they have different harvest cycles and they support each other. And so I use that because it's work, your family or friends or whatever, and yourself, because the self part is getting lost. And then people are angry and they're pissed off, and if you don't take care of yourself, the others don't work. But just like the corn, squash, beans, if one fails but the other two are healthy, you're in way better shape. And people are counting hours at work when in truth there's things at work that raise your energy, there's things at work that are neutral and distracting, and there's things at work that lower your energy. This is part of what I'm going to talk about in my very short window on Friday. But so they're counting hours. Like, I spent too many hours at work. This sucks. It's like, no, there's things at work that build your energy. There's things at work that are a distraction, like YouTube, I don't know, whatever. And there's things at work that lower your energy. There's things out of work that raise your energy. There's things out of work that lower your energy. And there's things that are distractions, like social media or whatever. So if you just shift almost all your time into things that build your energy, everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like solar power. There's no end. I just try to have almost all of my time build my energy. So even though I didn't get enough sleep last night and you didn't either, we're both in a good mood.
Supercharged.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But it's and together the conversation
absolutely.
Is making.
And now there's all three of these nice people that I'm happy to see, and then we're going to have a nice group in here, and we're going, so each thing is building energy. So whereas most people are working on coal, which runs out and creates a lot of noxious fumes and unpleasant things that they have to fight off. If you use solar power, it's clean, and people are all like, abundant. Your energy's up and my energy's up. The other model is I pull your energy out, you're exhausted, or you pull mine out and I'm exhausted, and I go home and I go, oh my God, what a nightmare.
I get it.
Yeah. You're doing it. I'm just giving a construct.
Yeah.
Fits with what you already do.
It is pretty interesting. And this is why I love when I get to interview people. And I don't usually interview people in person. It
just worked out.
It worked out
Thanks
great.
For being willing to get off the plane.
Oh no, it's it's about stress, eustress and distress, right? So what this is, what we're actually talking about is eustress, that motivational energy.
I say it all the time. Stress gets a bad rap because there's the stress of pursuing what you believe in and your dreams, and there's the stress of going along with something you didn't want to do but you believe you should do, or that something's imposed on you that's unpleasant, but that's negative stress. And the other one is good, like the stress of whoever's going to the NBA Finals is stress they choose. They're praying for that stress.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen, and my guest today, Ari Weinzweig, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Go out and rock your day. Stay safe out there.
Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime and anywhere from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes via our free app or from our libraries at toginet.com, iTunes, Google Play, and other fine podcast platforms. To learn more about Lisa's global consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Spread more joy by liking us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and following Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen. Harvesting Happiness is produced in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU Radio Malibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.